welcome. Let's begin the news with Modi's government speeds AI regulation before polls. 1 dead, 22 wounded in northern China gas blast. Japanese rocket explodes after launch. Navalny attack close to Lithuanian home. And Biden-Trump nominated election rematch looms. On India election 2024, the Indian government has asked tech companies to seek its clear permission before publicly launching unreliable or under-tested generative AI models or tools. It has also cautioned companies that their AI products should not generate reactions that threaten the integrity of the electoral process as country prepares for a national vote. The Indian government's efforts to regulate artificial intelligence AI represent a walk back from its previous position of a hands-off approach when it informed Parliament in April 2023 that it was not eyeing any legislation to regulate AI. It responded that Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi was accused of implementing plans some experts have characterized as fascist, citing his government's crackdown on dissent and its use of violence against religious minorities. Rajiv Chandrasekhar, Junior Information Technology Minister, responded by accusing Google's Gemini of violating India's laws. Chandrasekhar claimed Google had apologized for the response, saying it was a result of an unreliable algorithm. The company responded by saying it was addressing the problem and working to improve the system. Major tech companies in the West have often faced accusations of a liberal bias. Those allegations of bias have trickled down. The response saying it was a result of unreliable algorithm and faces accusations of a liberal bias. Those allegations of bias have trickled down to generative AI products, including OpenAI's ChatGPT and Microsoft Copilot. Meanwhile, in India, the government's advisory has raised concerns among AI entrepreneurs that their promising industry could be choked by too much regulation. Others worry that with the national elections set to be announced soon, the advisory could reflect an attempt by the Modi government to choose which AI applications to allow and which to bar effectively, given it control over online spaces where these tools are influential. The advisory is not legislation that is automatically binding on the companies. However, non-compliance can attract prosecution under India's Information Technology Act, lawyers said, according to a report. Mishish Chowdhury, founder of India's Software Freedom Law Center, said this non-binding advisory seems more political posturing than serious policy making. We will see much more serious engagement post-elections. This gives us a peek into the thinking of the policy makers. At least one person has been killed and 22 others wounded after an alleged gas explosion at a restaurant in northern China. The blast took place just before 8 a.m. local time on Tuesday in the city of Sanhe, less than 20 kilometers 30 miles east of the capital, Beijing. The explosion was suspected to have been caused by a gas leak at a fried chicken spot, report said, adding that the wounded had been taken to the hospital. China has seen a series of deadly accidents in recent months, often caused by negligent safety standards and poor enforcement. Rescue workers rushed to the scene of the Sanhe explosion, with the local Langfang Fire Service saying 36 emergency vehicles and 154 personnel had been dispatched. Police condoned off-streets and directed people away from the area. At least 15 people were killed and 44 injured last month in a fire at a residential building in the eastern city of Nanjing. In January, dozens died after a fire erupted at a shop in the central city of Zhenghu, with reports saying the blaze had been caused by the illegal use of fire by workers in the store's basement. That fire took place just days after a blaze at a school in central Henan province killed 13 school children as they slept in a dormitory. According to domestic reports, the fire was caused by an electric heating device. Now, shortly after launch, a small Japanese rocket detonated in a blow to Tokyo-based startup Space One's attempt to become the first local company to put a satellite into orbit. The 18-meter, 60 feet, four-stage solid fuel rocket called Kairos exploded into pieces seconds after liftoff at 11:01 a.m. local time on Tuesday. filing live stream screens with pictures of flames and billowing clouds of smoke. Burning debris could be seen falling onto the surrounding mountain slopes as sprinklers started spraying water. Space One said the flight was interrupted after the launch from the mountainous Kii Peninsula in western Japan and was probing the situation. There was no instant sign of what triggered the explosion or whether there were any injuries. Space One has said the launch was highly automated and required only about a dozen staff at the ground control center. Kairos carried an experimental government satellite capable of temporarily replacing intelligence satellites if they malfunctioned and was supposed to have put it into orbit about 51 minutes after the launch. Although Japan is a relatively small player in the space race, the nation's rocket developers are scrambling to build cheaper vehicles to capture booming demand for satellite launches from its government and global clients. Space One was formed in 2018 by a group of Japanese companies including Canon Electronics, IHI Aerospace, construction firm Shimizu, and the government-backed Development Bank of Japan. Space One wants to offer space courier services to domestic and international clients with plans to launch 20 rockets a year by the late of 2020s. Another Japanese rocket engine exploded during a test about 50 seconds after ignition last July. Last month, the Japan Aerospace Exploration Agency JAXA toasted a successful blast-off for its new flagship rocket, the H3, after years of delays and 2 previous failed attempts. The H3 has been mooted as a rival to SpaceX's Falcon 9 and could one day deliver cargo to bases on the moon. JAXA's successful launch followed Japan's January landing of an unmanned probe on the moon, making it just the 5th country to achieve a soft landing on the lunar surface. Now moving to Russia, a close ally of Russian opposition leader Alexei Navalny, who died last month in a remote penal colony, Leonid Volkov, has been admitted to hospital after being attacked with a hammer outside his home in Vilnius, the Lithuanian capital. Volkov is one of Russia's most prominent opposition figures and was Navalny's former chief of staff and until recently chair of his anti-corruption foundation. The Kremlin ordered a warrant for Volkov's arrest in 2021. His wife, Anna Buryakova, also shared photos of her husband's injuries on social media, including a black eye, a red mark on his forehead, and bleeding on his leg, which had soaked through his jeans. Later, Navalny's team shared an image of Volkov being carried into an ambulance on a stretcher and taken to the hospital. Lithuania's Foreign Minister Gabrielius Landsbergis called the assault, which took place at about 10 p.m. local time, as shocking. The perpetrators will have to answer for their crime, he wrote on X. The attack took place closely a month after Navalny's unexplained death in the penal colony, where he was serving a 19-year prison term on charges of extremism, broadly seen as politically motivated. Navalny, President Vladimir Putin's fiercest critic, had been in prison since January 2021, when he returned to Moscow to face certain arrest following treatment in Germany after being poisoned with Novichok, a nerve agent. Navalny's Foundation for the Fight Against Corruption and a network of regional offices were designated as extremist organizations by the Russian government that same year. His death, reported by prison authorities on February 16th, sent shockwaves around the world, with opposition figures and Western leaders laying the blame on the Kremlin, which denied the allegations. The 47-year-old politician's funeral in Moscow on March 1st drew thousands of supporters, a sporadic show of defiance in Putin's Russia amid a ruthless crackdown on dissent. Volkov left Russia in 2019 under pressure from the authorities. On U.S. politics, Donald Trump has clinched the Republican nomination for president, reports said, setting up a rematch with Joe Biden, the incumbent president who secured the Democratic nomination earlier Tuesday night. Report projects Biden and Trump will win their party's presidential primaries in Georgia, Mississippi, and Washington. Also Tuesday, Hawaii Republicans are holding caucuses while voting wraps up in the primary for Democrats abroad, the official arm of the Democratic Party for Americans living overseas. Biden is the projected winner of the Democratic primary in the U.S. territory of the Northern Maranhão Islands held earlier on Tuesday. Biden celebrated his status as his party's presumptive nominee, calling it a time of choosing in a new campaign video on social media. Trump's campaign posted a video on X of the ex-president later Tuesday, shortly after he clinched the nomination. The shortest slate of elections follows last week's Super Tuesday when Biden and Trump dominated across the map, putting both on the cusp of winning a majority of the delegates required to be crowned their party's presumptive nominees. Their rematch, long anticipated but hardly clamored for, is widely anticipated to mirror the 2020 campaign, though Trump will run this time under the specter of 91 felony charges linked to allegations that he plotted to overturn his 2020 election defeat, played a lead role in the January 6, 2021 insurrection at the U.S. Capitol, illegally took classified documents from the White House, and covered up hush money payments on adult film star ahead of the 2016 election. Though he now has a record of accomplishments and missteps for voters to weigh, Biden is so far running a similar campaign to 2020, appealing to worries over Trump's authoritarian behavior and a middling economy. Unlike Trump, the president never faced a serious, well-funded primary challenge, with Minnesota Rep. Dean Phillips, his lone rival in elected office, dropping out and endorsing Biden last week. On more stories in the shores of Africa, Army recaptures broadcaster from RSF in Sudan. Sudanese Army retakes state broadcaster headquarters in Omdurman, marking a major advance in the 11-month civil conflict with the RSF. Since the conflict started, the RSF had occupied the headquarters, but soldiers now celebrate outside. The conflict has displaced 8 million, raising hunger fears Army hails it as a major victory. However, despite taking the building last April, the RSF had not been able to transmit from it, and state television continued to show pro-army content, which was broadcast from elsewhere in the country. The Army and the RSF have fought for control of Khartoum and the nearby cities ever since the war broke out. Despite the United Nations Security Council's call for a ceasefire during the holy month of Ramadan, extreme fighting has continued in many parts of the capital. Last April, the conflict broke out following a disagreement between the Army's head, General Abdel Fattah al-Burhan, and the RSF chief Mohammed Hamdan Dagalo, better known as Hamdati, over an internationally supported political plan to move towards civilian rule. As well as displaying millions, the conflict has left Khartoum in ruins, caused a humanitarian crunch, and stoked ethnically driven killings in Darfur in the west of the country. On economy, AFDB chief says African nations must hold resource loans. According to reports, the head of the African Development Bank, AFDB, has urged African countries to put an end to natural resource-backed loans. Akinwumi Adesina called the deals bad and pointed to a bank initiative that aid countries renegotiate them. Linking future revenue from natural resource exports to loan paydowns is often hyped as a way for recipients to get financing for infrastructure projects and for lenders to decrease the risk of not getting their money back. The shift to renewable energy and electric vehicles has caused a hike in the demand for critical minerals, driving this kind of loans. In just a moment, I'll bring you more stories from Nigeria. Do stay with us. You're welcome back. Now, stories from Nigeria say Senate suspends Ningi over budget padding allegation. The former Senate deputy leader and chairman, Northern Senators Forum NSF, Senator Abdul Ningi, PDP Bauchi Central, has been suspended by the Senate for 3 months, asking him not to participate in all the activities of the 10th Senate. The Senate also resolved that if Senator Ningi writes to apologize during the period, he shall be recalled to resume his legislative activities. On Tuesday, the resolution of the Senate was sequel to a motion by the Chairman Senate Committee on Appropriations, Senator Olamilekan Adiola, APC Ogun West, on the allegations raised by Ningi of 3 trillion naira budget padding in the 28.7 trillion naira 2024 Appropriation Act, and that's the budget passed by the National Assembly for 2024 fiscal year, is 25 trillion naira, while the one being implemented by the presidency is 28.7 trillion naira. Senator Jimbo Ibrahim, APC Ondo South, in an additional prayer earlier had asked the Senate to suspend Ningi for an initial period of 12 months, and seconded by Senator Ede Daphnoni, APC Delta Central. Senator Usoko Ekpenyong, APC Cross River South, moved an additional prayer that the suspension be lessened from 12 months to 6 months, and his motion was seconded by Senator Barinada Mpingi, PDP South East. The additional prayer for suspension of a period of 3 months was raised by Senator Musa Garba Maidoki, PDP Kebbi South, and seconded by Senator Sani Musa, APC Niger East. Soon after the additional prayer was put to vote by the President of the Senate, Senator Godswill Akpabio, Senator Ningi instantly packed the heavy documents he came with and left the chamber. Previously, the Senate chamber was thrown into an unruly session and house of commotion as it started discussions on allegations raised by Ningi, who had raised the alarm of 3 trillion naira budget padding in the 28.7 trillion naira 2024 Appropriation Act. On Tuesday, anxiety began when the Chairman Senate Committee on Appropriations, Senator Olamilokan Ediola, APC Ogun West, raised a point of order, saying that he was one of those who prepared the 2024 budget, and that with what has transpired in the last 3 days, his privileges have been tampered with. Senator Adiola, who came under Order 9, 10, 41 and 51 of the Senate Standing Orders 2022 as amended, read out the notarized transcription of the interview the former Senate Deputy Leader and Chairman Northern Senators Forum NSF, Senator Abdul Ningi, PDP Bauchi Central, granted the BBC House of Service on Saturday last week. The Senate was thrown into confusion when Ningi was asked to defend himself following a constitutional point of order raised by Senator Adamu Alero, PDP Kebbi Central, that Ningi be given a fair hearing. Ningi, in his remarks, opened up cans of worms where he raised that the Senate does not know how much the President of the Senate, Godswill, was earning and the number of vehicles he has bought. The House was thrown into a rowdy session when Senator Jarigbe Agom Jarigbe, PDP Cross River North, raised an alarm that senior senators got 500 million naira each, while he got 75 million naira. And lastly on the news, WTO aids Nigerian non-oil exports with $1.2 million US funding. The World Trade Organization, WTO, has revealed plans to provide Nigeria with $1.2 million US in funding for the implementation of policies and programs that will boost the country's non-oil exports. On Tuesday, while speaking in Abuja at the launch of a key transformative initiative in the development of Nigeria's trade and industry landmark, the Director General of WTO, Dr. Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala, said the project intends to tackle cases of Nigerian products rejected at the international markets. She explained, we are launching today with STDF, ITC, and the NEPC, a project to help with international safety and quality certification for sesame and cowpeas or black-eyed peas. The agriculture sector in Nigeria has the potential to be a major driver of export diversification and job creation, but too much of this potential remains unrealized due to a variety of barriers. We all know the story about Nigeria being a significant exporter of palm kernel, groundnuts, palm oil, cotton, and cocoa in the past, but again, we all know that the country has since become a net importer of many of those goods. In fact, Nigeria has not only lost out in agricultural export markets, it is a net food importer, spending about billions a year for goods, many of which we can also produce in the country. Some of Nigeria's unrealized potential has to do with trade-related problems on the supply side, and that is what this project is seeking to rectify. The Executive Director of the Nigerian Export Promotion Council, NEPC, Noye Ayeni, in her address explained that available facts showed that Nigerian food exports, including sesame and cowpea, have often faced rejection due largely to poor quality, inefficient procedures and documentation, sanitary and phytosanitary issues, and improper packaging and labeling, amongst others. She further said the project is intended to last for 3 years with the objective of improving the integrity of the cowpea and sesame value chain for Nigeria. To refresh our memories, Modi's government speeds AI regulation before polls. 1 dead, 22 wounded in northern China gas blast. Japanese rocket explodes after lunch. Navalny attack close to Lithuanian home. And Biden-Trump nominated election rematch looms. And that's all on the news. Thanks for watching. I am Lois Chiraki.